Catherine, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the June 22nd Commission meeting, Park and Recreation Commission meeting. And since we're the Parks and Recreation Commission, I wanted to note that tomorrow is Worldwide Olympic Day, June 23rd, and it's a celebration of the Olympic Games all around the world, every country. Just to talk about fair play, friendship, honoring your competition, and peace. And so since we're recreation, I felt like I should mention that today. So happy early Olympic Day to everybody. So Catherine, would you now take the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Brown?
Here, sorry.
Chair Cribbs?
Here.
Vice Chair Greenfield? Commissioner Lemaire? Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Moss?
Here.
Commissioner Reckdahl?
Here.
Councilmember Koo? We have 5 present.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Are there any agenda changes or requests or any deletions? Hearing none, I think we can move now to oral communications. Lam, are you going to help with this tonight, as usual? Do your stellar job?
Yes, I will be assisting.
Okay, perfect. And so we have the recording on for 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Lam.
Chair, at this time, we have no requests for oral communications.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Then we can move to Darren and the department report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. I've got some updates on the Recreation Division, some summer offerings we've got. The Recreation will be hosting its annual 4th of July summer event this year. Typically, it had been called the Chili Cook-Off. This year will be a little different, no chili. There will be live music by Radio City All-Stars, a variety of food trucks, and fun and games and activities. It's taking place 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Mitchell Park, and no registration is required. Summer camp season has begun. There are about 160 in-person camps and 37 virtual camps being offered this summer, ranging from arts, science, technology, to sports, cooking, and foothills day camps. Recreation will be hosting another movie night. This will be Friday, June 25th at Mitchell Park. It'll be The Goonies, which will start at 8 p.m. Registration is required, but it is free. Mitchell Park Community Center rentals are moving forward with all the current guidelines being agreed to and followed by the renters. Similarly, at Cubberley Community Center, it'll be reopening for rentals beginning Tuesday, July 13th. An update on the Highway 101 bridge. You probably have noticed that the centerpiece of the bridge has been installed. Looks really good. And I had a question from a commissioner asking what's remaining to be done. What's the time frame? So between now and August, there's a couple still remaining to-dos. There's still pouring the concrete for the deck, that center span, installing bridge railing, fencing, and lighting, completing the pedestrian access ramp, concrete pouring on the West Bay Shore Road, and complete the paving on Adobe Creek Reach Trail, landscaping and irrigation, signage, striping, and miscellaneous site improvements. So should be in August that we wrap up that project. City Council meeting last night was eventful and impactful to CSD and to the Recreation and to the Commission. Our Commission work plan was approved on consent last night. The golf course contract, this is with our contractor OB Sports, was extended for another 3 years. The previous contract had been 3 years. So this is a mutually agreed upon extension. The budget was adopted. This has been a very challenging budget season. I just wanted to give a few key outcomes from the budget. One that's really impactful for our group is that the vacant supervising ranger, this is the position, it's been vacant for about 1.5 years now. And up at Foothills, we've just been doing without. That will be restored. So come July 1st, that will be funded again, and we'll go through the recruitment process and try to get a new supervising ranger on board. The Rinconada Park CIP, for those that have been following the budget process, there was the potential, or at least the discussion, that perhaps it wouldn't be funded. the way things worked out, the Rinconada Park project is fully funded. And the park bids came back and they're within budget, and they're going to council tonight for approval for the contract. It's sort of a complicated shell game with the funding, but for those that followed, just to know, the Rinconada Park project had a certain amount of community center funds going towards it. Those have been reallocated towards the Roth building, which I'll talk about in a second. And to refund Rinconada Park project, they're going to use park dedication fee funds. A little bit on that Roth building project, council decided to help fund this, and the funding would be coming from three sources. One is $2 million from the Stanford University Medical Center funds, or SUMC funds, as you sometimes will hear them referred to. The Community Center Impact Fee funds, those are the redirected ones from Rinconada Park towards Roth. And then $350,000 from the Park Impact Fee funds to help pay for the restroom at the Roth building, which will actually serve the adjacent park, Heritage Park. Something that the commission had taken action on to send a memo to council regarding the JMZ ticket pricing. Ticket pricing has been set at $10. And again, the JMZ is expected to open in October. Fire Station 8, that's the fire station within Foothills Nature Preserve. Some exciting new news, perhaps you've already heard this because it happened on June 15th, that they started staffing it again. This is a new relationship where Palo Alto Fire Department is teaming up with Santa Clara County Fire Department and Los Altos Hills to fully staff the Foothills Fire Station between June 15th and the end of October. So under this agreement, the city and the county are going to take turns providing staffing at Fire Station 8. Palo Alto provides firefighters for the first 2 weeks of the arrangement, and then the two agencies will begin rotating on a monthly basis, with Los Altos Hills County Fire District providing some funding for the staffing under this one-year agreement, which has the potential to be extended for up to 4 years. And just as a historical note, the city used to staff Fire Station 8 between July 1st and October 31st with 3 firefighters. But because of budgetary constraints, the city hasn't provided full-time staffing of that fire station since 2015. And instead, we've been relying on red flag days, which are dry and windy conditions make the area more vulnerable to wildfire. And in 2020, for example, that was 17 days. Got a message from the Palo Alto Pickleball Club regarding the Bay Area Senior Games at Mitchell Park. The pickleball courts will be closed for drop-in play during the games from Friday, September 24th through Sunday, September 26th. And those who are interested could go to sign up at pickleballtournaments.org. A little bit of information about the drought. On June 9th, 2021, Valley Water's Board of Directors declared a water shortage emergency condition in Santa Clara County due to the extreme drought and called for a mandatory 15% reduction in water use compared to 2019. It's important to note that Palo Alto doesn't get its water from Valley Water. We get ours from the San Francisco Regional Water Supply System, which is currently in reasonably good shape. The San Francisco Public Utilities Commission is asking for voluntary conservation in case the water supply situation worsens. But I wanted to assure the commission and the community that the parks team is already conserving water. We learned a lot from our previous experience with drought 2015, 2016, and about reducing water. I'll say, during that previous big drought, when we had significant mandatory reductions, we had taken a couple of missteps where we cut back water in certain areas too far and it impacted trees. And when we noticed that, we quickly changed course and targeted strategically areas, usually aesthetic turf areas where trees will not be impacted. And that's currently where we're achieving some water savings. I also wanted to make sure you're aware of, the City of Palo Alto is offering several rebates, 6 rebates for water savings in your household. And these can be found on the City of Palo Alto Utilities website. The rebates include rain barrel, cistern, rain garden, permeable pavement, landscape conversion, and gray water laundry to landscape. And again, you can learn more about that on the city's webpage. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Oh, that was a significant report, Darren, with quite a bit of good news. So thank you very much. I'm wondering if we could take some time for commissioners who have questions about the report, because the report was so big. I think there probably are some questions. So could I ask if there are any commissioners who have a question? Okay, well,
Oh, I have a question. I was waving my hand. Darren, about the fire station, is it staffed 24 hours a day or just during daylight hours?
I believe it's just daylight hours.
Okay. And is there any sensing there? Or is it just the fact of their proximity to fire and they can get a faster response?
The latter, yeah, the fact that they're so close to the hills and quickly get to incidents is both medical and fire.
Okay. And in the fire memo that was given council, they talked about potential sensing, having some sort of cameras up at Foothills Park. Is that, 6 months in the future or 6 years in the future? What are we talking?
Yeah, I think there seems to be a fairly significant push towards funding for that kind of thing. So I think probably the former, closer to near term rather than really far out. However,
Okay.
we've been talking about cameras for a long time and have had limited success. I just get the feeling that we're going to be making a bigger push in that area. So I'm hoping for sooner rather than later. And as I get new information, that particular endeavor is led by the Office of Emergency Services. And as I learn new things from them, where they're at, between them and fire department, I'll be sure to let you know.
And last time we had a drought, you went through and you made a big map. It was very rigorous, very impressive organizational event. And you went through all the parks and found areas that you thought could be cut back. How many of those areas after the drought was done did we start watering again?
Most of them rebounded to irrigate them properly, sometimes not as much as we had in the past, because both for financial purposes to conserve funding for water, because water is quite expensive, and also just to be water wise. There were some areas that just didn't need it as much, where the turf, it was okay to let it go completely brown during the summer. But for the majority of the sites, they were returned back to normal irrigation. Those are the areas that we're targeting now, again, where sometimes it's not really abundantly clear that trees are drawing upon some of these, depending on how far the roots of those particular trees go. But you can run the risk of really harming trees if you're not careful and prudent for, I call them turf dependent for irrigation trees. And so I think we've got a good understanding of where those are, and we're avoiding those, but still realizing some savings in water.
And are we doing any recycled water in trucks and driving that around, or are we just relying on pipes in the ground?
So we are not paying for any recycled, or Purple Pipes is the company that traditionally we've been using, and that they were doing dewatering. And so for mandatory houses that had to dewater their developments, they would pay for Purple Pipes to take their water, and we would tell them where to strategically use it. And then we would reduce our irrigation in those areas, but we're not paying for that, nor is it especially effective. The amount of water you can carry and the time it takes to deliver it, it's not a really prudent or effective means of irrigating any significant areas. But small little areas, I think it maybe has potential. But by and large, that is not the effort we're following right now to conserve.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Keith. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Thank you so much for the about the note about the senior ranger. That's great news. Are there other key items that you were particularly worried about or concerned about in that budget for you besides that senior ranger?
Well, I think it's a very good question. And there's a couple ways of looking at this. There's what we had originally proposed as potential cuts, and that were far more significant. There was even a second tier of cuts, which didn't end up making it to the proposals, which were even more dire and more impactful to my group in particular. I'll give you just one example. One has to do with our park landscape maintenance contract. This is a contract where we maintain the vast majority of our urban parks. And we had cut 27% or 267,000 last July in the same reason, right? Budgetary constraints, we had to save money. And those impacts are still becoming apparent. The weeds sometimes take a while to show up, and areas that were well maintained for a while gradually slip into disrepair. So we're still reckoning with that budget cut. And it's frustrating to me because we have some issues with trash not being collected as quite as frequently, and I'm getting complaints about it. Some unsightly areas where weeds are present. And frankly, it's the unfortunate consequence of cutting $267,000 from that contract. And I don't have a lot of great alternatives. It's one of those things we're going to have to deal with until we pull ourselves out of this. So to your question, what am I really happy about? We had another significant budget cut option on the table for that contract, and I'm really grateful we didn't need to exercise it.
Okay. And then the second thing is that you mentioned at the very, very beginning, the commission work plan. This is all of our work plans that we had submitted to prove why we're valuable.
Well, I think the council knows you're valuable and the community knows you're valuable, but it was to ensure that we're on the same page with council and they are approving of the work that you would like to focus on in this coming year. And by virtue of that consent calendar approval, I think we've got the green light.
Okay, great.
David, I would say that I think we're all really happy about that, to hear back that our work plan was acceptable and okay. And I think we're all anxious to get started. So that was really good news to me. Darren, what are the next steps? Do we have a meeting with the council, or probably not for a while? Anything we need to do, we can just march forward, right?
I think we're able to just march forward at this point.
Great. Okay, good. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we can move on to the business and the approval of the minutes of May 25th. Any comments, changes, corrections to the minutes?
I really appreciate the volume of the minute this time. It did remind me of what we did talk about. So thank you very much.
No, I'd like to join you, David, in saying that. I really appreciated it too. It's really good to know sort of where we've been. And so I'm glad we're doing that. Is that okay for the future, Darren, or are we going to have another directive to do the other kind of minutes?
You know, based on the feedback that I received from all of you, I think we pursue this. Catherine is the one who helped make this happen. So big thanks to Catherine Borquin.
Thank
and I think,
you.
yeah. So I think for now, we continue with that until we hear otherwise. I think we're good to go.
Good.
Okay.
I'm curious, how long did it take that to do this?
Oh, she didn't
I
type.
did not do it.
She arranged for it. Forgive me.
Oh.
She arranged for this. Yeah.
We hired a service to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how we've always done it. Yeah.
And how does the cost of that service compare to the service for the verbatim minutes?
I
Yeah,
haven't
rep-
gotten the invoice for this yet, but she did say it was very difficult to make it a summary. So it was kind of in between verbatim and summary.
Okay. I'm curious once we get the cost in to evaluate this again.
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
that's a good idea. Yep.
because I'm okay with verbatim if it's a lot cheaper. But I love the minute, but I know it must have taken more time.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I so move.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Catherine, a voice vote, please.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Chair Cripps,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield, Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Rectal.
Yes.
6 to approve the minutes.
Great, thank you so much. And thanks again for making those arrangements. Welcome, Commissioner Lemaire. It's good to see you. So the next thing on the agenda are the ad hoc and liaison updates. But before we start with that, I just wanted to remind everybody that I did send a note around to all the commissioners telling you that Commissioner Olson will be departing from the commission. And I just wanted to recognize you, Jackie. I have so enjoyed working with you, and I so appreciate your thoughtful approach and the way that you look to everything from a kind of a lens of what's fair and what's right, but how can we make this work? So I really appreciate it. I feel like it's a big loss to have you leave, but I'm very excited for you and your family. And I know that all the commissioners join me in wishing you all the very best. I wish we were all in person so I could give you a bunch of flowers or a card or something. It's frustrating to be virtual, but I thought if we could just take a minute if the other commissioners want to join in. So
I certainly appreciated having Jackie on subcommittees. And I was especially interested in her. She gave a comment in one of the ad hocs that basically said that we should be very careful to let staff do what they need to do and be an advisory role as opposed to a one to where we dictate what needs to be done. So I thought that was very important to hear because sometimes we can get quite heated, and but staff really does an incredible job and we need to support them. And what does that mean?
thanks for that, David. We'll keep that in a little like a little placard.
Yes, and I'd like to echo what both Anne and David said. And Jackie and I worked together on the Foothills Park, which was, of course, often quite contentious. And I always found her to be very judicious in her thoughts and very, as Anne had said, thinking of others. And I have very much enjoyed having you and getting to know you, Jackie, and all my best in your next endeavors.
Thank you.
I just also want to add, even though I'm new, that Jackie, you were so warm in reaching out to me to join a commission at such a strange time. And it was just made me feel very comfortable. And we were able to swap some more stories of being on the staff side of things. And I really like your appreciation and focus for the youth in Palo Alto. And I think there are so many kids that don't even know how lucky they are that they had you on this commission looking out for them. And so I wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thank you.
I want to say that I really appreciated you had a passion for parks and recreation, but yet you were still reasonable and thoughtful. And that's sometimes you get people who are very passionate and they're hard to work with, but you threaded the needle there. I'm going to miss you. I think we're all going to miss you. You really were an asset to the Parks and Rec.
On behalf of staff, Commissioner Olson, I just want to thank you so much for your service and echo what a pleasure it's been to work with you. I'll really miss you and wish you all the best.
Well, thank you, everyone. I had no idea that I would get all of those very kind words, and my cup is certainly full hearing from each of you. And it's just been such a pleasure to learn and grow through this commission. We're so lucky to have wonderful opportunities for Palo Alto and for people around, and wonderful programs, and just the dedication of staff, particularly during the pandemic, has been really impressive and inspiring. So thanks to each of you for all of your service and continued service. And yeah, hope you'll keep our family in mind as we join the Great Migration back to where we came from. And thanks again for letting me be a part. It's been a real pleasure.
Wow. Certainly, thank you for what you've given to Palo Alto and to the commission. We really appreciate it. We expect that, we'll hear from you occasionally, and keep in touch. And I think it's a good thing that we changed to minutes that will record all of the things that have been, all the tributes to you, so that
When I'm down, I can just pull it back up.
That's exactly right. That's it. That's important. So anyhow, thank you. I think you know what we think about you. So thank you so much. And so now the task at hand is to fill Commissioner Olson's positions on her ad hoc committees. And I think we'd like to do that tonight. And so Darren is putting something up on the screen. And I believe the first one is Foothill Park, Foothill Policy. So would anybody like to raise their hand for that ad hoc?
I mean, at this point, I think having 2 on there may be sufficient.
You think?
If, obviously if anyone has a burning desire, Jeff was on there before if he wants to rejoin it for an encore, but we could just start with 2, and if the commissioners need more help, then we could add 3 later.
Darren, what do you think? Since we have a lot of things on our plate.
Yeah,
But-
I'm just a little worried about 2. I think that idea could work, Keith, but I think there's some check-in points coming up, aren't there, David? That is going to be a lot of things to do. And then another one in January.
Yeah, end of summer and December. And I think the one at the end of the summer is going to be really important because we're going to learn a lot from what happened during the summer.
Mhm.
I'll just add that I remember during this discussion that we wanted to have one commissioner from the original ad hoc to stay on, and I think that was Jackie. I don't know if that, I just remember that being as part of the conversation. It may or may not be relevant now.
I don't think it's that important. I think we have a bunch of issues that are fresh. So I don't know if that's that important.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we leave it at 2 right now? And if the rest of the commissioners-
I'm happy to join that.
Great.
I'm not sure exactly when the ad hoc meetings will be. I'll do my best to cover those, but if Jeff or Mandy don't want to cover that, then I'll cover it.
Thank you, Keith. I think you'll be a great addition. And I do think of these 2 checkoff points that are coming up, we're going to need you. So I appreciate that. Thank you. The next one is the racket court policy. And that was Commissioner Reckdahl and Commissioner Olson. So a volunteer. Do you feel like that was okay with 2 people on that, Keith?
Yeah, we haven't done much this year. In the past, it was Jeff and me. There's not a lot going on right now. If someone's interested, certainly having a second person would be useful, but I don't think it's mandatory again. So I would see what the interest level is in the other commissioners.
Okay, anybody have a burning interest?
I'll do it. I'd like to.
Great.
join.
Thank you. That's great, Amanda. Okay, the next one is the Baylands 10.5, the liaison. And I would very much like to do that, but is there another commissioner who would like to do that as well, or in addition, or to act as the liaison? So Darren, I think we could put my name in there.
Okay.
Okay, the next one I see is GSI. Darren, could you refresh everybody's memory about exactly what that liaison does?
This is green stormwater infrastructure, and it's usually meeting with the public works team that looks at different opportunities for groundwater, green infrastructure, like, gosh, it ranges from cisterns, water conservation efforts, keeping water clean, all sorts of different possibilities within that. And it could be looking at different projects to say, can we incorporate it here or there, just staying up on what the latest is. I don't think it's an overly involved one, meaning you don't have to have
No.
quite so frequent meetings, but just FYI.
Yeah, I was the liaison for a while, and it also included those swales along roadsides, like when you do Ross Road redo and Arastradero redo. And they only met once every month or even every 2 months. So the main benefit for us is that they have a source of funding that is guaranteed. And so if there are projects that have to do with the drought or irrigation, then that might be valuable this year. But otherwise, it's it's really not very much of a labor.
So David, with your experience, would you be willing to serve on that again?
I guess I can do it just for now.
Yeah, just for now, is what I was thinking. So thank you. Okay, Darren, I think that takes care of everything except unless I've missed something, but I think I've got them all.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay, good.
Sure.
So we're going to take the next 10 minutes to fill in the ad hoc reports. I think that people did fill in the blanks, which is great, but let's start with Foothill and see if there's anything else to add. I thought that worked really well for me last time, and I liked seeing it represented in the minutes as well. So if we could do that again tonight, that would be great.
What I've written there, are you going to show that on the screen?
No, I don't have
I
a
don't think,
signal to share right now.
just a quick summary, David.
All right. Well, the majority of the work we did was to for the last meeting, we had that big status report for Foothills.
Mhm.
And so for this one, there was we didn't do that much, but we're sort of watching and monitoring. And so we need another meeting in July and another meeting in August. So that's mainly it. The other thing is that I did attend a Jasper Ridge event that talked about additional partners that we could use, including the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network and the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, who have had a lot of experience in some of the issues that we've faced, and also could very much use our Foothills experience in the future. So that was really important. And that's it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. The next ad hoc is Foothills Tide Gate. I don't know whether.
Or the Baylands Tide Gate, yeah.
Oh, Baylands, sorry. This, my eyes in this little print.
Yes, yeah, so Jeff and I got the Valley Water Plan, reviewed it, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes.
Great, thank you. Our Fund Development Committee did not meet. I attended a meeting of the Recreation Foundation, which they mostly talked about the music festival that's going on right now at Mayfield, excuse me, at California Avenue and University Avenue every weekend through the month of June, which they are helping to fund. So that's great. We're gonna add to the agenda for next month an appearance by both the Recreation Foundation and the Friends of the Parks, and then talk a little bit more about the work that we did last year that we made the presentation to all of you for fund development, now that we have an idea of where the budget's going. So I think that's good. The next one is the CIP review.
And similar to what you just mentioned, is we have basically been waiting for the budget to be approved, and really there's not much that we can do this year to affect the CIP schedule, but for next year so we intend to meet again later in this year to talk about what we can do next year. So that won't be until like December.
Okay, great. Racket court policy, Keith or Jackie?
Yeah, we have not met for months now, but we'll talk to Adam and see if anything is going on in there.
Keith, there's something about pickleball and lines on the courts. Is that resolved, or is that something that you guys have to get into?
Adam was going to look into that. We have not talked to him to see if he closed that or not. The issue is that they don't like the lines. They prefer darker lines that are more visible, but more visible pickleball lines means that they would also interfere with tennis more. So
And
there
was some question about the Coverly tennis court being resurfaced. Maybe for the next time you could see what the status is on that.
Yeah, they're in bad shape, but there's not a lot of desire right now to put any money into Coverly. So we're kind of fighting on two ends there.
Oh, yikes, yeah. Okay, the next one is dog parks and restrooms. And I think Commissioner Brown and I are in the middle of scheduling a meeting with the staff and some of the neighbors. Is that what? I think that's correct. Darren, do you have any other information on that?
Yeah, Chair, just to add, as of last night, I think our next park restroom will be at Heritage. So that one's coming up real quick. I understand it's a shovel-ready project was the term I kept hearing. I don't know exactly the time frame for that, but I imagine it'd be soon. Then the other one, perhaps concurrent, would be our Ramos Park project, and that we would have a restroom there as well. So good news coming on the park restroom front in terms of making advancements.
Yeah, excellent. That's really good news. Thank you for that. New recreational opportunities. We've had some really good meetings around the skateboard park and possibilities of location and different things that need to go in the skate park. That stakeholder group is excellent, and they're kind of expanding the group. We did ask that they include a female or two in the planning, which Sam is happy to do. So that's all good. And I think they're going to be able to come in July, don't you, Darren, to speak to us?
I think it's possible. I'd love to meet one more time with that group and try to work a few details out before we come, but it's possible July, and if not, then certainly August.
Certainly August. Yeah, I think that's great. Sidewalk vendor policy, and it looks like you guys did a lot of work already on that one. So does somebody want to speak to that?
I can say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Darren.
Just that our ad hoc has done some good thinking on this. We've met recently and had some consultations with the attorney's office to clarify questions. Fortunately, it's one of those that's just really challenging, especially the legal parameters that we're dealing with. So it's a lot of back and forth with the attorney's office that is going to take a little bit more time. We just want to make sure we get a really solid policy and not rush too fast. But the ad hoc's working hard on it.
Yeah, that's great. There were so many questions that came up that were, reflected in the minutes and everything. That's really a lot to think about. So it's good the way you're approaching it. Take a minute to do any liaison reports. And I've got a great one from aquatics. Everything is good in aquatics, according to our Tim Sheeper. He's targeting July 5th to return to traditional operations. No more reservations for lanes, which I think is good. They've tripled their workforce. Has asked him if he was having trouble getting people to work, and it appears that he's not. They're going to schedule more open time, family swim time to come shortly, and the new schedule will be implemented on July 5th. So it looks like everything is good. And Darren, you may have something to add there.
I don't at this time, Chair, but I'd be glad to do some more research at our next meeting and add it to the department report if you'd like.
That'd be good, because I think it'd be really interesting to see how the swimming lessons are going, and if anybody has asked for swimming lessons with any kind of scholarships attached, given the times and the fiscal issues that families are having.
Will do.
Thank you very much. Baylands 10.5, Jackie, anything?
No, we have not had anything come up this month.
Okay, community gardens,
Nothing.
Cubberley.
No, we're still waiting for the city and the school district to meet. And according to Councilperson Koo, they're still talking about the rules on how they're going to conduct this. So it's moving, but slowly.
Chair?
Yes,
Sir, do you mind if I just make a quick comment on the community gardens? While the ad hoc hasn't needed to meet recently because things are going well, which I largely attribute to Catherine Borkwin's great management of the program, I did want to mention something she's got going recently accomplished, and that was at our newest community garden. This is the relationship with the Palo Alto Church on Arrestadero. There was a successful planting, a pollinator plant planting that we brought in Juanita Salisbury. She was the expert who had come to the commission and shared some thoughts. So we brought her in, again, incredibly gracious of her to do a design plan. We purchased the plants and have added that. This is also a part of our park's master plan, is to have these corridors of pollinator plants where these species have multiple ways to get to resources they need. So it's another step in the right direction and an enhancement to one of our gardens.
that's great news. And Catherine, thank you for all your work on that. We're really lucky to have Juanita Salisbury too. She's terrific. The field users, is Vice Chair Greenfield on the call yet?
And Chair, I got a text from Vice Chair saying it looks like he will not be able to make it to the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, he's pretty extensive in his report, so I think we can just leave that there. Goff, Jeff Lemire.
I have nothing right now, but I will follow up with LOM this month to get an update on the golf course as well as First Tee.
Great, thank you. GSI. I'm assuming that is nothing to report, right?
Right.
Okay, good. And then the Recreation Foundation I just spoke about, PAUSD and the city. Keith, anything?
And nothing to report with the city and PAUSD.
Let's do it this way. If anybody has anything to report on safe routes, sustainability, skateboard park, urban forest, Ventura plant, and the youth council is not meeting through the summer, speak up and we can conclude this liaison report.
There is something about Ventura. Ventura did go to council.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my complaints about the plans is they didn't have enough park space. Council deliberated about this and they were sympathetic to that, but did not make any conclusions. They've bumped it to August when they come back after the summer break.
So Keith, what can we do to make I'm sure you made a very strong statement, but is there anything the commission should do about that?
Yeah, I just spoke on my own, but we could, if we wanted, if there is interest in the commission, to have a statement encouraging sufficient parkland. And the concern I have is that, we're really short of housing in the city, but we're throwing a lot of density here, and especially the apartments, people don't have the backyards. And so a lot of the things that you normally would do in your backyard, you now are going to do in the park. So I think we really need the parkland, and I view it as an equity issue. Is that people in other parts of the city get good parkland, these new residents in the high density, lower income areas, they really should get the same parkland. So I personally view that they should have sufficient parkland. If the commission feels that, I think it would be useful to have a letter to support that.
Yeah, well, I sure would agree with that. As I think I mentioned a long time ago, I lived in the Ventura area for a long time with little kids, and there weren't a lot of parks there. And I think the situation hasn't changed. So I think it would be good to pull out that statistic about parkland and the number of residents and the fact that San Francisco does so well at that, and see if we can't make a case for a little bit more parkland. I'd be happy to work with you on that. And other commissioners, how do you feel about a letter? Are you all in favor of that, or would you rather not do that?
I definitely am in favor of coming up with a letter.
Anybody else have a strong objection? Okay, well, hearing none,
Okay,
let's talk about it, Keith, okay?
okay, that sounds good. We can iterate on that and talk about it next meeting then.
Great, good.
And we probably should put that on the agenda to discuss it, so we can iterate with the whole commission.
Yes, that would be a good idea. Darren, can we do that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Well, I don't know how everybody feels, but those reports are really helpful to me. So thank you all very much for plowing through that. Let's turn now to the selection of a liaison for the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, Darren. And then this is an action item.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. This is going to be a very brief presentation. This is not a city project, merely one happening very close to some city property. This is about Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. They're undergoing a planning effort for their Hawthorns area of Windy Hill Open Space Preserve. So this is a 79-acre area located at the intersection of Alpine Road and Portola Road. This is about, as the crow flies, a quarter mile from Foothills Nature Preserve and about a half mile from Pearson Arastradero Preserve. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here's Arastradero in that light green and Foothills Nature Preserve in light green over here. And this is the Hawthorns area that we're talking about. So it's very close proximity to our nature preserves, which is why I thought it would be good to have our commissioners aware of it. And I'll get into a little bit more about why I think it's important to have a liaison follow this project and participate into the public meetings where feasible. So the Hawthorns area is subject to a conservation easement that allows low intensity recreational uses and related development that aligns with improvements typically offered on district preserves. Things like unimproved trails, split rail fences, parking areas, and directional signage. In 2014, the district board approved 54 action items in their open space vision plan that prioritized conservation and management efforts throughout their jurisdiction. For that Hawthorns area that we're talking about, the directions included opening the Hawthorns area. It's currently not open to public access right now. Developing trails connecting to Portola Valley and Palo Alto trails, exploring partnerships to protect, restore, and interpret historic buildings, and improve habitat conditions on Los Trancos Creek. So this Hawthorns area plan that they would develop would prescribe future uses and management activities at the Hawthorns area. And the district is proposing to hold a series of meetings with multiple opportunities for public comment during that first phase of the planning process. And because the Hawthorns area plan may include opportunities to form regional trail connections with other nearby public open spaces, including Pearson Arastradero Preserve and Foothills Nature Preserve, I think it would be helpful to have a commission liaison. And Chair, that concludes staff presentation.
Sorry, everybody, I was on mute. Any commissioners have questions for Darren?
I've been very interested in this subject about connections to other open spaces ever since I walked from Palo Alto to the sea on public land. But I went through Foothills to Los Trancos Open Space Preserve and then on to Montebello Ridge. But I've always been interested in being able to get from either Arastradero or Foothills to Windy Hill. And you have to go through Portola Valley. There's Portola Valley Ranch, and that's as close as you can get. But we desperately need some easements or something to get from the edge of Foothills over to that general area. And this will be a help in doing that, but not good enough. A quarter mile away is a long way to try to get a public easement. And I think our best bet is Portola Valley Ranch, because they have trails, but it's very hard to get from Foothills to that. and from there to Hawthorne's. So I would love to see something like this come to fruition, but it's going to have to be with some additional public easements. A quarter mile is a long way.
Thank you, David. Other comments from commissioners? So Darren, you would like to have a volunteer to be a liaison to this endeavor, right?
Yes, and I should note, Chair, that the vice chair had mentioned interest, and unfortunately he can't be here, but
I
for
thought
what it's
so.
worth.
Yeah, so shall we ask him to volunteer in his absence?
You gotta be careful, you miss a meeting.
Yeah, why don't we tell Vice Chair Greenfield that we would be thrilled to have him take on this position. And if he really doesn't want to do it, then we'll take this up again. I think it's a great opportunity for us to work as a commission or through our liaison with other entities who have the same desire for open space and trails and all of that. And it's always good for cities to work together, you know, because, and this is a good opportunity. This is a fun opportunity. It's not like a difficult one. It'll be difficult, but it'll be fun. So.
And Chair, I would just add, it's an opportunity to really learn from the best. You know, Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District is just sublime in their land management. Their staff are outstanding. And I think participation from either commissioner and myself or other staff in whatever we're allowed to participate in their public outreach could only help us to learn from their experience.
It's just such a good point, Darren. I've had the pleasure of watching Mid-Penn Open Space for years and years and years. They actually were a client of ours many years ago, and watched them grow and watched what they've done and watched their acquisitions and how carefully they steward the land. And it'll be great for you all to work with them. So this is a great idea. Thank you. Okay, so do you need an action? Do you need a vote there?
Yeah, I think if we just take a vote to have Vice Chair serve as the liaison.
Okay, would somebody like to make that motion?
I so move.
And a second?
No
Second. Okay, we'll let
Thank-
Jackie.
2 seconds. Catherine, would you do a voice vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield, Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes,
6 to have a selection of the liaison for the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District Hawthorne's area planning process.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on now to the park improvement ordinance for the Baylands Tide Gate Structure Replacement Project. Darren?
Thank you, Chair. My pleasure to introduce the Valley Water staff. This is an action item where staff's recommending the commission recommend that council adopt and approve a park improvement ordinance authorizing Santa Clara Valley Water District's Palo Alto Flood Basin Tide Gate Replacement Project. It's my pleasure to introduce Valley Water staff who are working on this project, Robert Yamane, Roger Narcine, Alexander Hunt, and Rochelle Blank. Thank you all so much for being here, and take it over. Robert?
Right. Thank you, Darren. Let me move this out of the way. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, City of Palo Alto Parks and Recreation Commissioners. I'm going to talk about the Palo Alto Flood Basin Tide Gate Structure Replacement Project, Park Improvement Ordinance. So, here we go. So Valley Water team, we have Rochelle Blank, our Deputy Operating Officer, Roger Narson, Capital Engineering Manager, myself, Robert Yamane, Associate Civil Engineer, and Alex Hunt, our Senior Water Resource Specialist. So the existing tide gate structure, as you see on the screen, it was constructed back in 1957. And the tide gate structure combined with the Palo Alto flood basin levees create a approximately 600 acre flood basin that provide 100-year flood capacity for Adobe, Barron, and Matadero creeks. They also protect against coastal flooding. And there's also one of the gates has been modified into a motorized sluice gate that the city uses to help enhance the water quality within the basin. And just a little aerial image showing the Palo Alto flood basin, roughly 600-acre area in green, and the tide gate structure circled at the northern tip in red. And the project objectives for this is it's a structure replacement project. So we want to maintain replace the existing tide gate structure, which is over 60 years old and has just aged beyond its service life. And we want to maintain or provide better level of service for the flood protection for Matadero, Barron, and Adobe Creeks, as well as to protect parcels in Highway 101 that could have coastal flooding if the existing structure were to completely fail. And also in doing the new structure, also to practically address impacts to flood protection due to future sea level rise, and also limit impacts to existing habitat within the Palo Alto flood basin. Here's just another perspective of the tide gate structure. The flood basin's on the left and the San Francisco Bay is on the right. And this is just a picture of some of the condition of the existing structure, some spalled concrete and exposed rebar and just weathering. And just imagine this over a 60-year concrete structure in a marine environment. It doesn't have epoxy coated rebar and that type of stuff. So it's reached the end of its service life. And we've had structural evaluation of this and recommended that it be replaced. And that's why we're proceeding forward on this. From a high level perspective, the schedule, we're looking at a 1-year proposed this year to do a surface improvement to the levee surface, which I have a slide on. And then following that would be 4 years of 5-month construction windows with an external contractor to do the actual tide gate structure replacement work and the dewatering and all this stuff. Temporary trail closures are estimated to be a total of 36 months. Only thing to add here on this tentative project schedule is that we are currently going through the process of obtaining environmental permits to do all the work. And we're hoping to get those this summer or fall, and as well as complete our 100% design by the end of the year. So all these dates, they are tentative and pending project development and acquisition of these environmental permits. So the trail work I just spoke on is in the pink shown on the screen. It goes from the tide gate structure down to the San Antonio roadside. And this, we're proposing to do this work this year using Valley Water O&M staff. And the current levee trail it's a soil earth levee material. So it's more of a summer, dry weather type of access. And what we're proposing to do is to put down a geotextile fabric with class 2 aggregate base, 3/4 inch maximum. So it's not really big aggregate, compacted really well. And that's to make it an all season, pervious surface that can function as a trail and also provide protection against the construction traffic. And the following 2 slides, they kind of go together. This is a table showing our anticipated timing of the different trail segments that would be open and closed depending on the time of the construction. And this is one of the attachments in the agenda. And this ties in with these color coordinated trail segments on this map, which is also one of the attachments. And there also are 2 locations where we need to keep the trail open for part of the detour route. And so there are these 2 locations, which I'll show you on the following page, which would have shared traffic with the construction traffic. And that are these 2 locations in red, a little tiny spot at intersection here. And then from the Bixby parking lot area to that first intersection. We're planning to install these construction project signs. That's 4-foot by 4-foot sign. As soon as we get approval, it's been going on for a while. I'm trying to get that finalized. And these would be 1 on each side of the tide gate structure installed as soon as we can get them finalized to show the public. Also, we want to install 11 by 17 laminated signs both here and also in additional places these would be able to be replaced more frequently, annually or however often we need to show the the trail closure dates more accurately. And this we can talk about later, but we were just hoping maybe we could get some feedback from the commission or the city about the temporary staging area right here, which is this is kind of I call it a donut area to the east of the existing tide gate structure. And currently right now it's mostly barren, but there's some patches of some vegetation, and we weren't sure if it's going to be used as a staging area, if the city likes to see this more as a trail use or would like to see it attempted to be seeded or whatnot, but it's an area we can talk about. And post-construction benefits, again, continued flood protection and continued use of the Adobe Creek Loop Trail. The trail with the new tide gate structure will be a little bit wider and have a little more aesthetically pleasing railing instead of the chain link fence. Educational signage near the new structure, talking about the history, and we can coordinate that with the city. As well as the new motor-driven sluice gate that will be on the new structure. We'll have advanced technology that can be operated remotely and set up on a schedule, provide better control over the water elevation within the basin, which would help with the mosquito breeding, as well as also just maintaining consistent water quality in the basin. And then lastly here, the anticipated construction traffic route. So we have a nice kind of loop starting on one side and going across the levee. But once construction excavates part of the levee, then it would change into a kind of a two-way on one side for the first 2 years. And then for the last 2 years, come in from the Embarcadero roadside. And then regarding public outreach, we would like to have a pre-construction public meeting prior to actual work commencing, as well as the project signage we talked about, our project website, which we'll keep updated at all times regarding trail closures, maps and all that. We do a next door outreach, as well as physical postcard mailers. And now Alex Hunt, I'd like to ask if you could talk about the environmental resources and impact.
Sure, thanks Robert, and hello commissioners. As Robert mentioned, my name is Alex Hunt. I'm the environmental planner supporting this project. First I want to acknowledge that we at Valley Water certainly do appreciate, the very special setting that this project occurs in. We've got many sensitive and protected fish and wildlife species in the area. Shown just a few of them here, but there's certainly many others. And in addition to the biological value of the area, as we've discussed, of course, the project area supports the Adobe Creek Loop Trail, which is part of the Greater San Francisco Bay Trail. During our site visits, we saw how heavily utilized this trail system is. And frankly, staff at Valley Water who live in the area have really emphasized its importance to the project team. Next slide, Roger, or Robert. And so, with those impacts in mind, we really thought long and hard about ways to avoid and minimize our impacts on the environment. First and foremost, we knew that any way we constructed this project that we were going to be limited to a work period between September 1st and January 31st to prevent any impacts to nesting California ridgeways rail, which is, I'm sure you're well aware, an endangered species out in the area. But with that limited work window in mind, we evaluated some various options. Really, all the options that occur right near the tide gate had pretty small and comparable wetland impacts. So that wasn't a big way that we could differentiate between alternatives. However, we did do some hydraulic modeling and we did find that some options had the potential to cause some erosion along the edge of Hooks Island, which supports a large, very nice patch of salt marsh habitat. And so we rejected any of the options that could result in this erosion. And we aligned the proposed tide gate in a manner that ensured that the island was protected. We also sought options and really configured our approach in a way that we could minimize the total length and duration of the trail closure. But given we know that there will be some temporary impact to trail users, we did find that it was important that we incorporated some new educational signage on or near the tide gate to highlight, either environmental resources or historic resources or something of that matter to the public. And we certainly look forward to working with city staff on the details of, what is most suitable out at the site. In addition to some of these design considerations, we'll also certainly be implementing a number of best management practices to avoid and minimize our impacts. And so, in light of these design efforts, the project still does result on some impacts on the environment, primarily to, various biological resources. But we've developed a suite of mitigation measures as part of our CEQA process to reduce these impacts. These measures include, having biologists on site to perform surveys or monitor construction as necessary, adding temporary fencing to keep the critters out and make sure that we're staying in the areas that we're supposed to be, providing training for our construction crews, capturing and relocating fish prior to dewatering this project site, and then lastly, providing compensation for our relatively small wetland impacts by purchasing credits from a local mitigation bank in Foster City. Next slide. And so as for environmental review, we finalized our CEQA mitigated negative declaration in April. We did receive comments on the draft MND from the city, as well as from BCDC, the Bay Trail, and other agencies. And we considered these comments and incorporated them into the document before finalizing, as appropriate. In regards to environmental permitting, we pretty much have every permit under the sun out of this site. I won't name them all, but you get their logos there. We have been and we plan to continue engaging with these agencies to get this project permitted in time to hopefully meet our construction schedule. And then, lastly, specific to the trail impacts, I do again want to just emphasize that, we really do understand how important this trail is to your community. And we've developed our detour plan based on recommendations that we received from BCDC and Bay Trail staff who had experience working on this area on prior projects. As Robert mentioned, we're going to have real clear signage out there regarding the detour. We'll widely advertise the detour notice well in advance, so there's no surprises for the community, and just make sure that everybody is on the same page about what's going to be happening. And so with that, I'll pass it back over to Robert.
All right. And I wanted to put the website up on the screen again for the meeting. And with that, I'd like to open up for questions.
I have a question. What's funny is one person's blight area is another person's beautiful place. My kids, the only way to get them to go on that long bike ride from South Palo Alto was the bike bowl, which you are going to take over as your staging area. And what I asked you to do is when you're done, put it back the way it was. They loved to go down those hills in that bike bowl. And so it may not look like much and it may not seem like it's of interest to anybody, but those three kids loved that bike bowl. So put it back the way you found it when you're done.
Oh, well, we're not actually going into that bowl at all.
Good.
It was just the flat surface up on top could be used for a staging area.
Okay.
And I remember Lisa Myers saying, be careful because she's had people crash their bikes out there.
Oh, there's been one or two. One other question I had was when you put that more all-weather surface on that road, is that going to remain afterwards, or is it going to be taken away when you're done?
Yeah, I think the intent was to just leave it there. And I know we received a comment from Commissioner Rickdahl earlier today, kind of also talking about that same topic, asking, could we enhance it? And that's something we could talk. We weren't planning to do a DG in addition on top of that. But, it's possible we could talk with the city staff because it's additional cost to do something like a DG out there. It's not currently.
Can you describe this fabric that we're putting on the trail?
Yeah, it's a plastic fabric, and then it would be covered with a class 2 aggregate base, which is and there's different sizes. So we're using the smallest size gravel for a class 2 AB.
So
And then it's
how-
going to be really well compacted.
So how long will it last, and will it degrade into the environment after a while, the plastic?
It's not biodegradable. That's something we might have. We're still talking about that, right, Alex? That might be a point. We haven't had a comment specifically regarding the material yet. That we didn't have any opposition regarding that material yet, because unfortunately there just aren't I guess the technology hasn't caught up with specifically these. So there's fabrics that are biodegradable, but these specific fabrics, what they do is the gravel, when the vehicles drive over it, it pushes down on the gravel, and the gravel tries to spread out, and it pulls that fabric in tension. So the biodegradable fabrics just don't have the tensile capacity to provide the support for the vehicle. So usually, Alex would know better, but there isn't really a viable alternative for that function.
Yeah, Robert, this is Roger. We have it's not it's called a geomembrane with a lot of holes in it, so it adjusts itself, and also this is kind of covered with the aggregate base, so the fabric is not exposed outside, and we have used this fabric, the specific one, which can take a lot of construction load, in a lot of our creeks, and it has been doing really good. So we have by history, there's a good performance of the fabrics we have noticed, and of course it's not biodegradable, as Robert was saying, and so we with the construction load of this much, I think we need with a soft soil out there, existing soft soil, we need something like this that can hold the weight. That's the reason we have this fabric. We recommend this fabric. Nobody's going to. It's all covered up.
And I guess we also wanted to point out just the alternatives, at least in terms of not using it at all, is that we would likely end up with damage to the trail during construction, which could cause delays. Cause delays to the contractor, which could then result in more closure or construction delays. So,
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is whether or not it needs to be removed when you're done, if it was going to degrade in 5 or 10 years into the environment. But if you're using it in other creeks, it would be nice to know what kind of lifespan it has, and will we need to remove it in 10 years or 15 years before it gets to that point. But you should have some experience with that, with those other creek beds.
Yes, we do. For example, Calabasas Creek, right next to Pond 8 South, where the Calabasas drains into joins with Santa Mas Creek. We do a lot of sediment removal in that area. And with the high groundwater pumping, this fabric was holding up really good. Otherwise, you had to put so much gravel, and then the gravel sinks very easily into the dirt because of the water. We keep on adding gravel, it keeps on sinking. So this fabric is kind of stretches out. It acts like a bridging effort for the dirt, the saturated dirt. We found it really useful. So we have like 10 years of experience using this fabric.
So the fabric will have how many inches of gravel on top of it? 6 inches?
8.
Eight, right?
8 inches?
Yeah.
And when it's compacted, how hard is it?
Well, we are requesting for 90% compaction. So see, for example, in the street gravel, it requires 95% compaction before you put the asphalt. This one is going to be a little bit less compacted than the street aggregate base.
So will we be able to ride our bikes on it?
Yes, the gradation is when, as Robert said, the maximum aggregate is 3/4 inch. So most of the aggregate is going to be like 1/4 to 3.5 inch aggregate. It is compacted well because it's all mixed together. So the aggregates will be into the base. So it is good for riding the bike. We are using the same kind of base material for our levee surface roads for the district, in a lot of places.
Okay.
Would you be able to ride a road bike on this as opposed to like a thick tire?
It's a good question. Yeah, Roger, I don't, road bike would
Road
be,
bike, they are meant for asphalt, the thin tires. I don't know. We can get back to you on that. See,
Okay,
with the
because I ride the trail going down to Sunnyvale.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of road bikes on that. And so if we're going to be going to something that's gravelly and mushy and that now road bikes can no longer use this stretch, people are not going to be happy. I mean, they're not going to be happy right now, the fact that they're losing all these seasons, but that's something I think we just have to do. But I really am interested in making this surface usable for road bikes because it is heavily used for road bikes.
and I believe these Class 2 AB was installed on the west side from the Tidegate structure to the Bixby parking lot. Darren, I wasn't around then, but I believe this was installed when I talked with our folks in Ray Bramer. He said that they did install that, but Ray believed that the city had later added a type of shell material to the surface. Not sure if you recall maybe some further enhancement to that, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. And it's a great question. Commissioner Rectal, staff shares the same sentiment that it's critical that the surfacing of the improvements on that levee be comparable to all the adjacent levees. So Robert and I have discussed that quite a bit in terms of compaction, the size of the material and the granulars inside, so you get that good compaction. I think with the prior levee work I've seen the district do and what we have there, we should get something very similar, if not better, that holds up just as well. What we have had in the past in certain areas where our own public works had done the job, this is immediately around the landfill, is they used rock that was too big without fines, and it did not compact well, and it was hazardous to bikes. There's no way you could have a road bike do it. They had since fixed that, adding the right kind of base material in keeping with what Valley Water is proposing. So I think we'll end up with a high quality product that'll last a long time. To the question about a shell material or a DG or anything else on top of that, I would not recommend that. Really, really expensive, does not hold up to vehicle traffic at all. That's the stuff that gets mushy, leaves dents. The compacted base rock with the fines will hold up 1,000,000 times better in my experience, because we have oyster shell trails and they are very expensive, in the neighborhood of 20 times the cost of a base rock trail. They don't hold up at all. So I think we're heading around the most durable and probably most efficient surfacing material we could have at the Baylands.
Yes, Dan, I totally agree with you. Even with the DG, if you walk on it, you can see the footprint. Okay, it is that the DG will not hold it once you have a saturation in the DG. So, adding DG is not going to help for the street bike. So the other thing we have to consider is if you make it really, really tight, then it is kind of leaning towards the impervious side. We would like to have a pervious surface, so we want to balance this out. So that's the reason this AB is pretty good. It provides a good, strong support as well as it's pervious, and the water drains through. So sometimes the DG, the water won't drain through that fast. So so these are the things we have used them before district levee access roads, and we have a good experience with that. We will go back and take a look at where we have used street bikes in this kind of levee surface. We can provide you the data.
Yeah, I was thinking that's why I was wondering if it's better to remove it when you're done, or if you have what you have during the construction phase, and then you lay something over the top of it afterwards that would have a finer grain for not necessarily road bikes, but crossover bikes. That would be great. And so you could maybe have it two different ways, one during construction and then add something over the top at the end.
Yes, we can look into that, Commissioner Moss. We definitely can look into that, and we can have a different gradation on the aggregate base too.
One quick question, Roger and Robert, if down the line, for some reason, we get some lift or exposure of the fabric, would Valley Water come back and make the necessary repairs to conceal, repair, or cover?
Yes, we could. Yes, we will. Not we could. We will. We can. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, do other commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Brown or Commissioner Olson or Commissioner Lemaire?
I have one question. I'm not sure if it's for staff or for Valley Water, but on the SCADA system, what sort of redundancies or backup power is built in just to make sure there's resiliency in the case of a power outage or an emergency or natural disaster of some kind?
I can take a stab at that. Thank you for the question. So we're actually talking with some manufacturer vendors of sluice gates to see, which is, I don't want to digress, but it's another conversation I was probably going to have with the city soon. If we can find a standard product that's already made, that could also be more cost efficient, perhaps if we find something that fits the bill. But and so there's a few different products. We're definitely having we have the power out there, so it's going to be hardwired. Some of these systems actually do have a battery backup. That's why I was saying might be a possibility to have the battery backup as well. They will. We are putting in also a hookup for a temporary, a portable generator hookup. So in the case of a power outage, you could hook up a generator. It could also be manually cranked open as well. That wouldn't be for the SCADA, but it could be manually opened if needed.
You have three overrides. If something, you have plan B and plan C.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. Anybody else with questions, comments?
I have just a very quick question. What's an estimated cost on this project? If I know it's not talked about it necessarily in the document, and there's going to be cost sharing, and we might be a bit away from putting a price tag on it. But do you guys have an estimate for what this will cost?
Yeah, I believe our total project cost, including everything, staff time and just the whole project overall from the beginning. And it also includes some previous repairs that we did in 2017, attempted repairs, but it totals out to around 39 million. A lot of the cost it's a lot higher than you'd think for structure replacement. It's because of the multi-year construction, mobilize, demobilize, and also before we can do any of the work. And I didn't want to get into like some of the technical details, but I was going to show basically the dewatering system is a huge cost, because in order to do any of the work, the like a sheet pile needs to be installed into a large perimeter around this thing, or cofferdam sheet pile needs to be installed in order to keep the water out of the work area. And then so there's a lot of preparatory work that needs to be done just to get in there and work. And then we can only work for 5 months before the outside of the California Ridgeways Rail breeding season, and then the contractors get out and come back again the next year. And so that's this multi-year construction that really drives up the cost. Also, the reason also for doing this is because it serves a very critical function. A large amount of water can come in if we have a 100-year storm, and so we can't cut off the existing structure until the new structure is built and put into service. So, anyways, that's just a justification for the high cost.
Thank you.
Jeff, anything else? Good.
Nothing. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Olson, anything?
Yeah, one quick question. Do we think the new tide gate will last as long as the old one?
Well, we think they'll last a lot longer because we have better concrete now. And one of the main things is that we're going to use, it's a marine environment. And if you look at current codes, structural design codes like ASHA LRFD, which has a design code for bridges, and in this similar type of marine environment, they recommend to use a epoxy coated rebar, which, probably wasn't practical or maybe available even back in the 1950s when this was constructed. So the epoxy coated rebar would prevent the corrosion from getting in, and then the rebar starts to corrode and expand and pops off the concrete. And so that corrosion issue would be addressed in the new construction.
Thank you.
Robert, I appreciate all of your information and your comments. Very, very good. I think that we're also interested in making sure that obviously schedules change, and we're going to hear from the public about the trails being closed and when they're opened, and communication is going to be really important. It looks like you have thought about all of that, but just from our perspective, we're interested in those schedules and in what you plan to do with communication. And I think you've done a good job of talking about that. So
we'll continue to coordinate. Thank you, Chair Cribbs, and we'll continue to coordinate with Darren and the ad hoc committee commissioners.
good. Okay.
I have a few more questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so in the document, I'm not sure if it was in your presentation or is in the staff report, it talked about we're gonna have 2 extra feet now for sea level rise. This will be higher. If the sea level rise goes above that, then what happens?
Yeah, so good question, Commissioner Rectal. And so what the 2 feet is really referring to, because there's 2 functions of the flood protection. One is to drain the basin out, and the other is the sea level rise coastal flooding protection. And so we're actually raising the structure for to the levee height. We're coordinating this with the shoreline phase 2 project as well. And so that's being designed for more than 2 feet of sea level rise. And the issue is that the way that the flood basin drains out, it's based on gravity. And so when there's I'll try not to get too technical, or I'm trying to make this easy to understand too, but basically once above 2 feet of sea level rise, the sea is not going to overtop the tide gate structure. We're still far from that. The problem is that the low tide is now 2 feet higher than the low tide now. And so the basin can't drain out of the tide gate structure. Not that the sea is going to overtop. And so it's the function of it's the fluvial flooding or the riverine flooding that we can't drain the water level in the flood basin to the level that we need for the 100-year flood protection of the 3 creeks. Does that make sense?
Oh, so you say the extra 2 feet in the flood basin means it has less capacity now.
It has less capacity for the rivers, for the creeks.
For the rivers.
And so, but this is an adaptive design. And so really what it needs is a supplemental draining capacity to the basin, which cannot actually be done with the gravity where you have. So even to put this in better way to explain it is that even if we quadruple the size of the tide gate with quadruple the number of gates, it wouldn't change that capacity. Even if we made the structure taller.
It's not
right,
flow limited, it's actually height limited.
It's the height limited based on the low tide. And so what would have to happen at that point is a pump station would need to be added at a later time to supplement this. And this is unfortunately like the problems that we're facing with sea level rise and with the shoreline phase 2 study that's going on as well. The tide gate structure, they're looking at this as well, is that future down the line will need to be supplemented with a pump station at some time, not just active drainage, not just the passive drainage.
So, based on the study, the 2 feet of sea level rise, it's about 35 years of time. It's going to take 35 years, so to speak. And so we don't, the numbers change all the time for the sea level rise. I mean, every day there's a new modeling and they change all the time. So this based on the medium level sea level rise, based on a 50-year target, and this 2 feet is for 35 years. It's 2.62 feet for 50 year. As 2067, that's a target. That's the model we used. And so the 2 feet is around 35 years. So it needs to be for some time, maybe 10, 20 years, 30 years down the road. And we may need a pump station. We don't know that at this time. But theoretically, you may need a pump station. And keep this in mind, this structure is elevated at 15.5 feet, then it's almost 5.5 feet higher than the existing structure. And this has got 2 feet of freeboard built in it. So the structure is going to sit up really 5.5 feet up high in the top. Then your transition levee is coming down. So it may not look that pretty because it's going to look really eyesore, something sitting way high up. So I just want to let you know that we had to be aware of the fact that it is constructive of future. So the levees, we believe that will be improved to match the same elevation. So we are doing this for the future, so to speak.
Okay, that's very good. So you're saying that if you're on the levee now, we're not raising the levees, but when you reach this tide gate, you actually have to go up a little hill, go across the tide gate and go back down.
It's a transition. It's going to, with the, I think with the ADA compliant slope,
Right.
we have transition slope. So that's where it's a hike, in other words.
The levees will be raised. I mean, the levees will have to be raised in the future. I mean,
Okay.
the rest of the levees will have to be raised.
Yeah, we've been talking with the SAFER people. And so you talked about phase 2. Is that the SAFER?
The US Army Corps. They're coordinating with SAFER.
Yeah,
so
this is. I think SAFER is run by JPA.
Yes, we
Right.
have used
And you're
that.
part of JPA, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
we have been in that meetings, and we use that report as part of the basis for the study too. So
Okay.
that report was used.
Okay, that's very good news because I'm worried about 2 people designing things separately, but I'm glad that you're
It's
coordinating.
consistent with their report. Yeah.
Keith,
Okay.
anything else?
Oh, yes. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your point of view.
No
I have a
problem.
question for Alex. Alex mentioned that we're purchasing some wetland credits because there were some impacts. What were those environmental impacts that required us to buy the wetland credits?
Yeah, so there's waters of the United States and waters of the state, which are effectively wetlands and open water bodies that through our permit process, we have to mitigate for them or offset our impacts. Anytime there's a permanent impact, in this case, the permanent impact really kind of occurred along the outboard side of the levee in about a 5-foot wide strip of salt marsh. Let's see, we got, Robert's
Good. I'm pointing for you.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where we've got permanent loss of salt marsh, and it totals about 0.09 acre. So it's quite small. We did work with Darren and city staff to try to identify some on-site options, but to offset by some sort of project in the Baylands. But those projects tend to have a much larger scale than offsetting that level of impact. And so in coordination with the regulatory agencies who we've been discussing this with over the past couple months, it looks like we'll be purchasing mitigation credits from the San Francisco Bay Wetland Mitigation Bank, which is up in Foster City. And that's essentially you just give them money and they've already mitigated in advance for you.
So what does 1/10 of an acre of wetland cost?
Well, so we have to mitigate at greater than a 1-to-1 ratio. And then we also actually have to mitigate for, it's called temporal loss of the dewatering area. So anytime you have an impact that extends greater than 2 years, in this case, we're kind of right there, you have to mitigate for that. So all told, we're buying 4/10 of an acre, which is going to cost about $800,000.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. You also were talking about Hooks Island. So you look in the flow that's going through this and you're worried about whether it's going to cause erosion. Will this change the sediment, how sediment is delivered? Because we have that sailing area right over there. Will we have any issues with sediment filling up our sailing area?
Sorry, where exactly are you?
Okay, so
talking
right there, just to the left. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. The sailing area.
Sailing, yeah, I'm sorry.
I was hearing saline. Yeah, no, that is something.
I dropped my G's, I'm sorry.
It's confusing in this environment. Yeah, no, that's something we specifically looked at. That's part of the reason we did this modeling is there is a tidal channel that, as you know, runs from the tide gate pretty much straight to that sailing dock. And so we were concerned that by adjusting the tide gate itself, that channel might migrate away from the sailing dock. And after kind of, given the distance it is and the way we're creating this pilot channel and all this, modeling suggests that that's not going to be a problem for us.
Right, and that's why we wanted to have the new tide gate structure, having the outlet in the same slough ultimately as the existing. And so there's this kind of throat right here, which is where the existing tide gate structure, which is right here, goes up here. And so we're aligning with that. And this is this is over 1,000 feet out to the sailing structure, sailing ramp. And also we looked at the velocity differences, and that's why this is a good option, because it maintains the same characteristics. So yeah, I do think that shouldn't be an issue.
So the angle of this tide gate is different than the previous one, but that won't change the flow. The flow is basically still unchanged.
Right. Well, if we kept the same, because the new structure is offset a little bit to the right, and so and inward, and so we've angled it to align it with the same throat. And then once you start getting out away from the velocity, drops down significantly once we get away from the face of the structure. So the most critical aspect is to get it aligned initially with the throat between the flood basin little bar here and the Hooks Island, and then the velocities drop down significantly.
So that's good. You had noticed the angle; it is different from existing to proposed, and that's the reason we have a pilot channel grading. That grading joins with the existing daylight line, so it kind of trains the flow coming from the new structure to the old direction. So that is the main point of that grading, as you can see in that the gray sheet, the grading sheet, as Robert was pointing out. So that is the main reason why we did the grading, just to make sure that they point to the same direction once it gets out.
Okay. Very good. Darren, do we have to dredge the sailing area at all?
We haven't since the 80s.
And would we be able to, or would the permits be hard to get these days?
The permits are fairly restrictive. I think that's why they stopped it so long ago. And I mentioned it is significantly more expensive and rigorous to get permitting to do so.
Okay. And so you don't anticipate any issues with being able to keep on using the sailing area?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I have a question now. I'm not sure if this is for Robert or Darren. I'm really concerned about outreach, and I'm glad you have that slide in there, Robert, about the outreach. Is Valley Water going to be doing the outreach? Is the city? Are we both doing it? How's this handled?
Well, we'll definitely do our outreach. And like I kind of went over the different methods. We have the signage, we have our next door and the postcard mailers, and a pre-construction meeting. The city, Darren, what do you have anything to add?
Just that we would like to work closely and intend on working closely with Valley Water, like we have this whole way forward. We've been working on this for quite some time. And I think the way forward would be taking and enhancing the outreach that they're doing through good communication with Megan Taylor, our Chief Communications Officer. So as we get either materials, whether it's flyers or public meetings, we would help disseminate that word even better. But I
Okay.
don't think the city would be hosting extra outreach meetings.
Okay, I think that's a good way to have one person run it and we can push people towards that. There's an outreach meeting tomorrow, isn't there? I thought Valley Water was having an outreach meeting tomorrow.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Am I imagining it? Okay, I'll dig that up. So then, Darren, what's the timing? If we pass this tonight, it goes to council. When does it approve? When is the PIO approved then?
So it would go to council, which will be after their break. We're trying to shoot for the very earliest, which would be very early August. Get on there on the consent calendar. 2 weeks afterward, they'd have the second reading of that ordinance, and then construction can begin 31 days after that.
Okay,
So you
We-
really have a tight schedule to get it done so that you can start in September and be done by October, by January.
No, this year, we were looking to start, I said mid-October, but it's actually more like probably early November
Oh, okay.
when our crews would actually be able to get out there.
yeah,
the-
I'm just worried that we really need to let people know now, because we're not going to change this. There's been so much planning, and I think the planning has been good planning, but just when something's coming like this, I think people take it better if they know it's coming, as opposed to saying we did this and we didn't tell you about it, because no one I talk to knows about this. So can we put up signs that say proposed on this site or something, just so they know something's coming and they don't feel that we're governing in a vacuum here.
One
Yeah,
thing I will
I'll
say
push
about-
that.
One thing I will say, we, as part of the CEQA process, we put a whole bunch of signs out there. City staff actually helped us, post them at, I think it was 7 or 8 different locations. And then as part of our BCDC permit, we'll also be required, which we'll be doing shortly, to post signs, and we'll probably be posting in the same location. So
Okay,
that'll
good.
be kind of the first, maybe one piece of the initial outreach on site, but I think certainly we're open to more.
Yeah, I go south from San Antonio, so I don't see this area that much. So, okay, yeah, having signs out there, that would be very good, because we just want people to be informed. And
With a detour map, with a map of the detours,
Okay.
not just what's going to happen, but where you'll be allowed to go.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
So
We need to
Robert,
work.
I think we had to mount a pole and a post and a pocket to have these flyers in there.
Yep.
That way it will have the detours, it will have more information, and we can mount this post, not this kind, not this big, because we are not ready for this one, right, still. But I'm talking about a simple pole with a post with the pockets, and we can install that in a few places.
We can tie it on. There's a bulletin at the bathrooms on the Bixby side. There's the, I got to go back to Alex's comment where we go back and look at all the places where we posted up for the MND. I think we
So-
had good multiple locations that,
So Alex, with the posting on an A-frame, that's temporary. That's temporary.
we can do that
we-
too. Mhm.
Yeah, we don't want to do that on the A-frame because we want to keep it on the side. And
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about it, okay?
Yeah, and I need to
Okay.
get this rolling. I want to, don't give the false impression that it takes a while. So I don't have this sign, which I thought would have been done months ago. We've coordinated it with Darren and the committee, ad hoc committee for the Tidegate structure, the 3 commissioners. And it somehow got into the hands of one of our directors, and they want to look at it. And so it's I need to track it down and really get that through. Regarding the 11 by 17s, I'll get that going right away too, because that's the ones we can post up.
We have been preparing the signs for the last 6 months. Let me say that.
Yeah, we don't need to solve all these problems right here in this meeting, but just
Yeah,
want to make sure it happens.
Actually, David, I was just going to say that this sounds like a lot of details that ad hoc committee can jump in with, and I'm sure you've been dealing with them. But I think what's important for us to convey is we're anxious about communication, advanced communication, anxious about signage, anxious about letting the community know that this is a big deal. It has to be done. It's going to be going on. It's going to be inconvenient, but it has to be done. But we need to know about it earlier than later. So can we now move to the?
I have one more question. I'm sorry, Anne. Yeah, yes. I dug up the Valley Water, and it's June 24th, but that was last year. A year ago, you must have had
That's
a
true.
Zoom meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
You're correct.
Okay.
1 year ago.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So I have one last question for Darren. Big picture. Okay, so I was looking at the proposed PIO, and it's talking about mosquitoes and maintaining water quality. Darren, can you just give us an overview of how we plan on using this? Are we actively raising and lowering this sluice, or are we just basically letting the water come down and letting the passive gates do their work most of the time?
Yeah, great question. And it's different right now than it used to be because of the condition of the existing structure. So prior to its most recent problems, let's go back 5 or 6 years, the rangers would come out and adjust the gate as necessary. I think in one of your communications with me on this topic, you had asked about how frequently to adjust it. It varies during the time of the year that the rangers will come out and make slight adjustments. There are times where you can leave it static. Approximately 6 inches open got us about a foot tidal exchange, which would bring in water and flush it out and get a good exchange. So you've got the gravity fed exit, and you've got this one tidal gate where we can allow water in.
Mm-hmm.
During the rainy season, there are times where we just leave it closed and you don't have any tidal water coming in. It's just passively exiting the water from the basin to the bay. The way the mosquitoes factor in is that we've got a particular height. It's negative 2.2 feet in the winter. If we rise above that, we start to get ponding, and water will accumulate in low areas in the marsh in that 600-acre flood basin area, and mosquitoes will breed. So it's very important that we monitor that water. So back to, I mentioned in the past, we would actively manage it. In the more recent times, going back a few years, the water has started to flow underneath the structure. Now, Valley Water came out and did a very extensive repair to try to stop that. But there are a few other issues with this aged infrastructure that cause water to flow in ways that we can't control it. And that's the biggest problem in terms of making sure you've got good tidal exchange, which means healthy water. We avoid things like low dissolved oxygen, which can kill off fish. And then the other big piece is you control those water levels to prevent ponding that breed mosquitoes. My feeling is that this new infrastructure that goes in will be far more effective in allowing us to control effectively the amount of water that comes in from the bay into the flood basin.
So is the flood basin brackish, or is it freshwater, or?
It probably varies depending on the time of the year. So when we've got it closed for sometimes long periods of time during the rainy season, you've only got fresh water coming down the confluence of those creeks into the basin, and some discharge from Mountain View as they discharge into the basin, and very little salt water coming in. Other times of the year during the summer where we try to get a good tidal exchange, it was probably closer to brackish. And sometimes you can look at the plant species in an area, and I'm getting out of my depth, and Alex is here who's far more qualified to answer that. But if you look in the flood basin, and I've hiked every inch of that, you've got a mix of fresh, brackish, and saltwater plants. In particular, the salicornia or pickleweed that most people learn about when they look at the bay plants. There is pickleweed in there. So it's certainly got elements of saltwater vegetation and saltwater, of course, from the bay. But you've got plenty of freshwater plants too. So I think brackish is probably accurate, and I would say it fluctuates depending on the time of year and whether we allow bay water in.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all, Ann. I'm done with my questions.
Thank you so much, Keith. They were great questions. I appreciate that. Darren, we need to have a motion now.
Yes. Yeah, you can basically use the one in the staff report, the recommendation that City Parks and Rec Commission recommends that council adopt and approve the park improvement ordinance for the Tide Gate project.
Okay, would somebody like to make that motion, please? I was going to say, Keith, it would be fitting that you should make that motion.
I'll do it. I thought I talked enough. I was gonna let someone else do it. I so move.
Thank you very much. And a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And Catherine, a voice vote, please.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield, Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Rectal.
Yes.
6 to approve the PIO.
Great. Thank you so much. And Robert, I'd like to thank you and your team from Valley Water for coming to talk to us about what you're doing. And we certainly wish you speedy and the best of luck. So thank you very much. Darren, let's go to the tentative agenda for July 27th. And I think we have some things already on the agenda, but what's on your list?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And thanks again to the Valley Water team. Really appreciate you being here and excellent presentation. Take care. Have a great night. Chair, I've got a number of potential items. Let me go down my list. Bear with me just a second. So from tonight's meeting, we talked about a memo to council on the NV cap regarding parkland. We could have that as a discussion item at the July meeting. An update from the Friends of Palo Alto Parks and Recreation Foundation as a discussion item. And then we've got 3 potentials that I think I just need to vet a little bit more. One is park improvement ordinance for Bullware Park. Potentially a discussion with Skate Park, just to bring the commission up to speed on our latest discussions that the ad hoc and the stakeholders been having. And depending on our progress, the sidewalk vendor regulations could potentially come in July, though we will likely, before we're ready for an action, it seems to be we're heading closer towards August for that one.
And so would that maybe be a discussion in July and then an action in August? Is that what you?
Potentially, I'd like to meet with the ad hoc and come to consensus on whether we think we're at a good point to share and discuss, or if we need a little more time to come up with a proper recommendation.
Okay, so I would just suggest that we think about the 2 foundations, both Park and the Recreation Foundation and the Parks Foundation, and then see if there'll be enough time once we look at everything else to talk about fundraising in general, or if we want to put that off. So, and that would be the fundraising ad hoc. And the skateboard would, well, I think that's good. I think if we can get the skateboard in July, I think that would be great, because I just think it would be great if we could do that. Anybody else have anything from?
so for August, are we going to make sure that we have a Foothills update for August?
Yep.
All right. And then I don't know if you remember, but 10 years ago, the anabolic digester was that 10 acres near the old Palo Alto dump was taken away from Bixby Park and is due to go back into Bixby Park at like in October. So could we get some kind of a something on maybe the August or September agenda from staff or from Karen North or somebody like that about that and what it means? You know what I'm talking about, Darren?
I do. This is the Measure E. And come
Yeah.
November 2021, there's potential for council to rededicate that 10 acres as parkland. And I'm glad to check in with Public Works, who were heavily involved in the the measuree where it was undedicated. I'm glad to look into that.
There are two things on my wish list. Fire briefing, they delivered the memo to last council meeting, and they talk about foothills a little, but they don't go into a lot of detail. It'd be really nice if the fire department come in here and we could just have some discussion about their plans for Foothills Park. One thing that I thought was interesting in the fire plan was the grassy area of Foothills Park is designated as a safe refuge. So if people can't escape because the roads are clogged, they can go and hide in the middle of the grassy area and put up structures. And like that up in Paradise, they did that in a few areas where they had grassy areas and they would put up structures because like at Paradise, they had softball sized embers falling down. And if Foothills burns, we probably would get something similar. So that would be a reasonable spot to, so it'd just be interesting to see both their thoughts about evacuation of the park, getting people off the trails, and also other issues like the safety issues. So,
and I have passed that request on to fire and OES, and they've received it and acknowledged it, but have not come forward with a commitment to the presentation per se.
Okay, and the other thing is purple pipes.
Wait,
with
wait, before you go there, one other thing for the fire department and Foothills is that there's new techniques for how to do fire breaks without introducing invasive species. And so I was wondering if this is, Mid-Penn is a good resource for that, and CAL FIRE for the Santa Cruz Mountains. So if there's some way that we could get an update on that at the same time in that same discussion, that would be great.
I can look into that. That probably wouldn't come from our OES or our fire department, but I can try to do some research and talk to those people to find out what they're doing and borrow best practices.
Okay.
Darren, I hope that we can do something about fire. Keith asked, I think, about it a couple of months ago, and I thought it was a good idea then, and I think it's even a better idea now. So is there any kind of invitation that we could send from the commission, or?
I think for right now, it's probably best to come from me, but we can revisit that if we need to. And if it's not quite going the way we want, we could also consult with Councilmember Koo as well, and find some different ways to get what we're trying to achieve happen.
Good. Thank you. Keith, you had another?
Yeah, the second one was a purple pipe. There are plans for extending the purple pipe. Things like Mitchell Park Community Center and Library have been piped for double pipes, right? So you could take that recycled water and run it into the bathrooms. It would be nice to know just a long-term plan for the purple pipes. They're also going to run it, at least that was the plan, was to go up into the industrial park, Stanford Research Park. It'd be nice to know what their timeline is, what the plans are, and also what we can do to speed it up. Is there anything that, because it's been on the table for quite a while, and have we done any extensions recently?
No, there hasn't. I think we had Karen North, excuse me, come quite some time ago to the commission, years in fact, and present a little bit on this. Is probably wrapped up into a bigger discussion. And she shared much the same, that they have long-term plans, but nothing in the immediate works. And it was, as you say, they have a proposed route that they had kind of looked at, but the costs were so very high, and there has been no movement on that.
Darren, is the they you're speaking?
I'm glad to check.
Of Public Works?
Yes.
Okay. And is there federal funding for us for that? Or is it just?
I don't know. Yeah. Karin would be the one, and I'm glad to do two things. One is I could get some basic information and include it in next month's department report, and I could put in a request to say, at some point when you've got some heft to a presentation, could you come to the commission and give them an update?
That'd be
Yeah,
good.
I mean, this doesn't have to be a big thing, right? If she just wants to come and say, this is our plans and there's a lot of TBDs here, that's fine. We're willing to take, we can see the sausage being made, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I think that's all comments and announcements from anybody. Well, I would just suggest that we all try to at least listen to one musical production on either Cal Ave or University coming up this either Saturday or Sunday. because I think they've been pretty much fun and I think people are appreciating them. So otherwise, have a great summer, have a great 4th of July, and we'll all get together in the end of July, I guess. So a motion to adjourn would be good. Keith?
We'll let Jackie make this motion.
Adjourn.
That's great.
I'll second it.
Yep.
Okay, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Bye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
Jackie, we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll miss you.
Hi, Jackie.
We'll think of you when it gets to be 110 in St. Louis and muggy.